and welcome to today's video where we're going to be talking about how to navigate feeling dissatisfied, right? Because at the end of the day, the reality is we are always, as human beings, going to have things in our lives that are not how we want them to be. We are going to have situations where we're not where we want to be, where there's pain, where we're struggling, where we're not making the progress we want to be making, where there is a goal that we have or a thing that we want to achieve that we have not achieved. And more broadly speaking, in our culture, we are so inundated with a idea of what life should be and an idea of what is going to bring us satisfaction that does not actually bring us satisfaction. So a lot of us are chasing lifestyles that are attempting to deal with this feeling that we are not enough, that we do not have enough, that life is not enough, that don't work, right? We are attempting to fill our cup and to find satisfaction and to find fulfillment in things that are never going to give us that. And being able to recognize what actually brings us satisfaction is huge. Okay? So we are going to look at how do we deal with the kind of micro, I actually do have a goal, I do have pain, there are things that need to be improved and I can see where they need to be improved and how they need to be improved, and still being able to be okay within that stuff. And we're going to talk about the macro of why our culture is setting us up for a life of constant dissatisfaction and manufactured discontent, and how we can, in a more broad sense, find a life of satisfaction through seeing that and seeing through it and being able to reorient ourselves to something more meaningful. Okay? So we're going to have kind of two prongs of this discussion today. So number one, like starting from the more micro, like I said, when we're living with pain, when we're living with things where we have goals that we have not accomplished, and we have places we want to get that we are not, and we have real specific things in mind of changes we want to make to our lives that we truly believe are going to make us happy, and we are not there yet. How do we live in the in-between while we're working through that stuff and trying to get there without letting that in-between space just be totally painful and horrible, and all we think about is how we're not there yet and how it's not working and what's missing and all of that, okay? So first things first, when we are in that state of I have a goal or I have pain and life is not going for me the way that I want it to. I hope you can predict where I'm going with this. The first step is to validate ourselves, okay? This is a normal part of life. Pain is a normal part of life. Wanting to be somewhere that we aren't is a normal part of life. And at the end of the day, I think all of us have to admit and surrender to the idea that so long as we're alive, okay, life is never going to be perfect. There's always going to be something that we're working towards, that we want that we don't have, that isn't perfect, that doesn't feel good, that is painful, that is upsetting. This is going to be a constant of life. No matter how in alignment we are, no matter how self-loving we are, no matter how self-aware we are, no matter how much work we've done on ourselves, there will always be something that isn't perfect in life. And as hard as that can be to accept, I think this is one of the things that we need to accept in order to be able to find relative satisfaction. Right? There is never going to be a perfect. We are never going to perfect our bodies. We are never going to perfect our careers. We are never going to perfect our financial situation, our relationships, our living situation. There's always going to be something that can be improved upon, that hurts that we're trying to figure out and we can't figure it out yet, and that we are working towards that we haven't achieved yet. Because that's the other part, right? So long as we're alive, everything that we accomplish, every there we ever get to, is always going to be the foundation for the next thing we're going to accomplish. The next there that's there for us. The next dream, the next goal, the next thing that we want, the next level of transcendence, the next whatever it is. So no matter what, so long as you're alive, you're never going to get it done. You're never going to find perfection. And you're never going to reach a state where it's all complete and everything has come together and you're perfectly secure and there's no fear and there's no insecurity and there's no struggle and there's no goal. It's never going to happen. So coming to terms with that, first things first, is that when we are feeling that dissatisfaction, when we are feeling that pain, when we are feeling that this life isn't how I want it to be, I'm not there yet, I'm not good enough, the first thing is that we validate where the pain is, we validate the frustration, we validate that it sucks that we're not there yet. Okay? The first step is compassion for yourself. Compassion for yourself. It sucks that I'm in pain. It sucks that I'm not where I want to be. I'm frustrated. I'm impatient. This isn't what I want. There's something better that I wish was happening, and it's not. And that is valid, and it's okay, and I'm allowed to feel this way, and it's not because there's something wrong with me. It's not because I'm not trying hard enough. It's not because the universe hates me and they're holding something back from me. It's because this is how life works. So we start with that. Validation, love, support, and kindness will always, always, always be the first step. All right? So no matter where you're at in your life cycle right now, anywhere where there's pain and dissatisfaction, I really want to invite you to step into validation and compassion before you try to do anything else. Because if we try to push ourselves, if we try to find our steps, if we try to figure things out from a place that is not rooted in self-compassion, we are often going to find that we make the pain worse. Okay? When we are not taking our steps from a place of love and self-compassion, we are often then going to be moving from fear, from stress, from shoulds, from that place of feeling inadequate and like we're failing, or like we have to fight and swim upstream and do this whole battle. And that can really hinder our capacity to move forward. It can hinder our capacity to figure out what our next steps are. It can hinder our capacity to find joy and contentment in the things that are working and that do feel good. So this is why it is so important that we start with compassion, that we start with validation, that we start with self-kindness before we try to move anywhere. Okay? So again, if you are in that place where you are in pain and you don't know how to get out of it, where you have goals and you're not there yet, where you're struggling and it just feels like life is shitty and it's not working for you and you want it to be different, it is okay to feel how you feel. It is okay to be dissatisfied. It is okay to be in pain. And I want you to notice, again, where your mind is telling you that it's hopeless, that you're never going to make progress, that nothing is ever going to change, that you're behind, that you're not doing enough, that you aren't enough. And I want you to recognize that that is your childhood coping mechanism. That is not your adult, linear, logical voice that is telling you the truth of reality. The childhood's voice in our head says, when I am in pain, when I don't have what I want, when I'm not where I want to be, when I'm struggling, when I'm hurting, the reason for that is that I suck. I'm doing something wrong. I'm not good enough. That's why those voices come up. That's why those stories come up. Or that childhood voice says, because it's hopeless. Because it's never going to change, nothing's ever going to change, nothing ever changes. And the reason that the childhood voice sees it that way, right, is because when we were in that temporary codependent relationship with our caregivers growing up, we could not see that life could change. We did not have autonomy. We did not have control over our circumstances. We did not have the power to be able to change things when they weren't working. We were dependent on people around us to fix things for us when we were in pain, to figure out what we wanted and to give it to us, right? We did not have adult capacity. So we learned that the only thing we had control over was our behavior, how we acted and how people responded to us. So in that, we learned that when I am in pain, when I feel stuck, when things are not working, to turn into myself, to look at myself and say, what's wrong with me? What am I doing wrong? How is this my fault? So that we could change our behavior in the hopes that that would change how the people around us were responding to us. And that that would change our circumstances so that we would feel better. That's how it worked in childhood. We could not change our own circumstances. We depended upon others to change our circumstances for us. And the thing that we had control over was our behavior in the hopes that that would change how people were responding to us, how caregivers were responding to us, how authority figures were responding to us. We could not see that life sometimes is just painful, that caregivers are not capable of giving us everything we want all the time, that sometimes things just take time, that painful things happen and that are not our fault. We could not see that. And so we either had the option of changing ourselves and fixing ourselves and telling ourselves this is because of me on some level. So if I can figure out how this is my fault, I can change myself and then people will respond to me differently, and then I'll get the things that I want and that I need. Or we go into that helplessness, hopelessness, nothing is ever going to change. Because if we really experience, right, like our caregivers never helping us, never changing anything for us, never soothing us, never coming for us, we would have experienced that nothing ever changes. Nothing ever gets better. Everything just feels shitty forever. And so when it's shitty. Because caregivers don't fix it. Nothing ever changes. Nothing ever gets better. I don't have any example of how things get better. And therefore they don't. So that's where that voice comes from. When we're in pain, when we're dissatisfied, when we're not there yet. And that voice comes in and says, it is because you suck, you're not doing enough, you are the reason. Or nothing ever changes, nothing can ever get better, I'm never going to get out of this. I want you to start to recognize that that's your childhood reasoning coming up and trying to help you in the only way it knows how. Okay? So we have compassion. We validate how we feel. Then we look at those voices and we witness them as the childhood self, trying to get us out of pain, trying to figure out what to do, or giving up because it doesn't believe that there is anything we can do. And then we need to soothe those childhood parts by reminding them that we are now adults, that life is not how it used to be, that we now have autonomy we didn't have before, and that sometimes life is just hard. Sometimes things are just going to take time. Sometimes we lose the things that we love. We go through a breakup, our bodies get sick, we lose a job, things don't go how we thought they were going to go. We have goals that we're not there yet. We have steps that we have to take that we haven't been able to take yet. We're taking steps and we haven't seen the results yet. And that is just how life works. That we are not trapped, we are not stuck, and we are not dependent upon the approval of others to get the things that we want and that we need. We step into our adult capacity. We step into our adult perspective. And we give ourselves this question. We ask ourselves this question. What do I need to feel supported in this right now? Right? That is the big shift. When we are feeling dissatisfied, when we are feeling stuck, when things aren't working, when we are in pain, validating compassion, witness the childhood self, soothe the childhood self, come into the adult perspective that life is simply much more complex than it was when we were kids, that painful things happen that aren't our fault, that we can learn and grow and change based on our new understanding and new awareness. And then we look for our next steps through asking, what do I need to feel supported right now? That is where we are going to find our empowerment. When we are dissatisfied and life is not going how we want it to. We've done all that inner work that I just talked about. And now it's time to find what our next steps are. Because that's what's going to make us feel empowered, is realizing that getting out of pain, working towards a goal, getting from where we are to where we want to go is never going to be something where we see the whole path. It's never going to be that we have a full and complete picture of how we're going to get from where we are to where we want to go. We're never going to find the one step that's going to heal everything, that's going to fix everything, that's going to change everything. This does not exist. Rather, all we are ever going to be able to do is the next step in front of us. Progress is made through one step at a time. And all we ever have to know is what our next step is. We do not have to see the whole staircase. We do not have to see the whole way forward. We only ever need to know our next step. And so when we come into this state of self-compassion, when we come into this state of adult regulation, and then we come into this state of expanded awareness that life is just complicated and it is going to take time and it's going to be a journey to get from where we are to where we want to go, we can say, okay, what do I need to feel supported in this journey right now? Right? So we're no longer trying to fix ourselves. We're no longer looking for the perfect solution. We're no longer trying to change ourselves. We're not telling ourselves this is my fault and the reason I am here is because I suck. We've stepped into self-compassion. We've stepped into true adult awareness. And then, like I say, this whole reframe of what do I need to feel most supported right now? What would feel most supportive for me is how we are going to find our next step, which is where we are going to find our empowerment. Okay? When we feel like we have steps we can take, that is how we start to feel more satisfied. That is how we start to feel more content. That is how we start to feel like the journey isn't the thing that's in the way of us feeling how we want to feel. Because the reality is that when we're on a healing path, when we're working towards a goal, when we're doing anything that's truly supportive and nourishing for us and taking us in the right direction in life, we don't have to wait until we're at the very end goal to feel better. We don't have to wait for the perfect relationship to feel better. We don't have to wait for the perfect career to feel better. We don't have to wait for the perfect healing of our bodies to feel better. When we are truly on the right path, when we are really healing, when we are really growing, when we are moving towards our goal, every step we take should be a step that leads to feeling a little bit more satisfied, a little bit more empowered, a little bit more aware, a little bit more strengthened, a little bit more expanded, because we're learning from what we're going through. We're taking steps. We're moving towards what we desire. And that should feel good. This is the big secret and the big key that I think a lot of people in the world are missing, is that when you're on the path, each step you take should have pleasure in it, should have some satisfaction, should have some feeling of, I accomplished that, I did that, that moved the needle, and that felt better. So when we move from self-support, when we move from what do I need to feel supported right now, what would be a supportive step I can take? Do I need to ask for help? Do I need to challenge myself a little bit? Do I need to give myself a break? Do I need to work in a new way where I'm not trying to fix myself? Right? But I'm looking for how I can give myself what I need to move towards what I want. That is going to feel good. That is going to feel good. So if the steps that you're taking don't feel good while you're taking them, if you're not finding fulfillment along the way, I want you to start to question your path. Okay? If it's this feeling of, I just have to do this shitty thing and this shitty thing and this hard thing and this is awful and everything is just pain, thinking that you're going to pain your way into pleasurable life, I want you to question that. Because that is not how it should feel. When you're really walking your path, when you're really making progress towards what is true for you, what is healing, what is nurturing, it's not going to be pain, 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 pain. It's not going to be stimulation, 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 big drop off. It's not going to be big buzzy high, this is going to change my life, oh my God, this is the answer, and then big disappointment. It's going to be steps and progress and things that feel incrementally better each time you take the step. So that is what I want you to look for. When you are moving towards your goals, when you are moving towards healing, when you are moving towards fixing things, each step you take should feel a little bit better. Even if it's hard, even if it's challenging, even if it's, right? Because that's going to exist. There are going to be times and places where you do have to do hard things. And we do have to do things that are just kind of shitty. That's absolutely going to be a part of this, right? The whole path is not going to be bliss. That's a myth. But again, it should feel grounded in this sense of this might not be comfortable, this may not be what I want to be doing, but it feels very right and it feels very satisfying. It feels like the next right step. It feels important. It feels like it aligns with self-support. It feels like it's taking me in a direction where when I do this thing on the other side, it is making me stronger. It's fortifying me. It's setting me up for success. And that's how it should feel. Okay? So that's the micro. Validate. Recognize that inner child voice that's telling you it's your fault, or that you need to be approved of, or that it's because you're failing, or that it's hopeless. Soothe that inner child. Come into your adult perspective. Work from self-support. What feels like the next most supportive step I can take? What feels like the next most empowering step I can take? Not fixing myself, not trying to make myself perfect, not trying to make my life perfect. Returning to those things that feel like they are nourishing you. And then watching to make sure that the steps that you're taking actually feel good. The path itself should feel good. Overall, the path itself should feel like it's satisfying you. The path itself should feel like each time you take a step, you feel a little bit more fulfilled. You feel a little bit more satisfied. You feel closer to your goal. You feel more connected with yourself. And if it's not that, if it's all pain, if it's all struggle, if it's all when I fix myself, when I'm better, when I change myself, when I get there, I'll feel better, that's not it. Right? If we're working from how do I fix myself? How do I improve myself? How do I change myself? That's not it. Self-support. And steps that feel like they are moving the needle for you and making you feel better now as you go along is what you want to look for. Okay, so that's the micro. And I hope that makes sense and I hope that was helpful. Okay, so now the macro. Our culture is not set up to teach us how to live a life of true satisfaction. Okay, well, last thing. Again, understanding that within all of that, it's very important that we validate the progress we've already made. That we take time to look at the fact that we've already grown, we've already changed, we've made improvements, we're not where we used to be, and that even if things are hard and things are struggling right now, that we've learned, that we've changed, that we're never starting from square zero. that we have insight and wisdom and tools that we didn't have before. And so even if we're in a tough time or a tough spot or a place we didn't think that we would be, we're not at nothing. Looking for the things that are supportive right now. Looking for the things that are working right now. Looking for the things so that we can see that we are not totally lost, that we are not totally in pain, that our entire life isn't out of control. Looking for the things that are working and that are good and that we have done and we have accomplished and we can see where we are enough. That's the last step in the micro. Okay? Don't let yourself get lost in only focusing on where you have to go. Be sure that you take time to look for all the things you've already done, all the things you've already accomplished, all the distance you've already covered, all the tools you already have, all the wisdom you already know. That you pay attention to what has worked and what is working and what feels good, and fill your life with more of that. Because again, we cannot create a life that feels good for us by continuing to fill it with a whole bunch of things that feel terrible and expect that one day all of these terrible feeling things are going to one day equal something good. That's not how life works. We have to keep filling our lives with the things that align with how we want to feel. And that's now what we're going to talk about in the macro. Okay? So again, our culture teaches us to chase superficial highs, superficial stimulation, superficial pleasure, or to sacrifice ourselves constantly to pain and suffering and struggle for the system, telling us that one day if we just sacrifice ourselves enough, life is going to feel good. So most of us are living lives where we're either constantly chasing these little highs, sex, drugs, food, parties, stimulation, approval, entertainment, all of these things. That high of all the things that make us high in our culture. Or we're living lives where we're totally disconnected from our own value system, where we're totally disconnected from what actually matters to us, to what we care about, to what is going to bring us fulfillment and satisfaction. And we're following a path that we're being told we should follow, that will make us good, that will make us secure, that will make us right and justified and perfect. And it never does. And it never feels good. And we're constantly sacrificing ourselves and our pleasure in the moment for this future that never comes. So it makes sense that most of us are living lives where we feel dissatisfied because we're not taught to connect to our value system, and we're not taught to connect to the things that actually bring us fulfillment. Okay, so again, evolutionarily, if we look at how humans evolved, the way that we used to live, and we've talked about this a lot lately, is in these small, tight-knit communities where we worked and lived and thrived and survived together in a collective, right? Where we worked with our environment, our natural earth environment, and we worked with all the different skills and capacities that everyone in the collective had to create a community where we worked together to figure life out, to make progress, and where we would spend the time we needed to spend working on doing the things that needed to be done for us to survive. So then we could spend the rest of our time doing the things that felt good and were pleasurable, like making art and making music and all of these things. And again, it's not to say that we want to return to this way of life and that that's the key. However, we want to use this as a kind of model for understanding why our current way of life can feel so dissatisfying, right? Because our current way of life, so many of us work jobs that we don't see an outcome. And that is totally unnatural to us, right? For most of human history, for most of our evolutionary history, we would put in work and we would immediately see the outcome, right? You put in work and then you have food. You put in work and then you have shelter. You put in work and then you have clothes. You put in work and then you have a child that grows. You put in work and you have protected yourself from a predator. There was a one-to-one outcome. So satisfaction was sort of built into the whole working process because there was an immediate feedback of what that work did for you. And many of us don't have that now. The work that we do doesn't give us an immediate feedback of a result. And that can make us feel like our work doesn't mean anything and like we're doing things all day that are unsatisfying and unfulfilling. Second thing, we used to have connected community. And finding your purpose and finding that thing that you do that was special to you was done within the context of what you offered the group, right? What your special skill was and how that benefited the group. So we, again, this whole finding your purpose hero's journey thing, that was done within a very specific context for most of human history. And that context was community living. That context was you go off and you discover your thing, and then you bring it back to the group, and that's the thing that you contribute. And then you benefit from the things that everyone else in the group contributes, right? So you're the hunter, you go out and you hunt, and then you benefit from the people who build the houses and the people who are the shamans, and you benefit from the medicine woman, and you benefit from the person growing the zucchinis. And we all benefit together by contributing our thing that we do and then working with the things that other people do. Third thing, we were connected to nature. We were connected to our natural environment. We interacted with the trees and the soil and the weather and the earth and the water. And that was huge in shaping and forming our nervous systems and how we respond and how we feel regulated. We had supportive, nurturing community of people around us, and we had a connection to the environment that we lived in. And then last thing is we weren't working all the time. We weren't stimulated all the time. We had times and places where we were done work, stimulation was over, and now we were creating. We were indulging in whatever we were doing. We were resting, we were making art, we were discovering science, we were doing all of these things. And that brought a lot of fulfillment to life, right? These off hours of creativity and expansion and spirituality and all of these things, exploration of our humanity beyond getting our survival needs met. That is how we evolved. So again, compare that to the life that we live now, where we're hyper individualistic. We have zero community, where so much of us is working and putting in effort and doing all these painful things that don't feel good, that we don't enjoy, that we're being told you just do this for 40 years and then you get your retirement and that's your life. But there's no feeling of like dissatisfaction in the thing we're doing day to day. We're not connected to nature. We're being told that we need to literally monetize every part of ourselves. Every creative aspect, every spirituality, everything, you either need to be selling it to the internet or it doesn't matter. It doesn't count. It's a waste of time. Or we don't have time. Right? There's that other part of it, the manufactured discontent. Part of manufactured discontent is this life that we live where so many people have to work so hard just to keep their heads above water because of the way that our systems are set up. Right? There are people out there who literally don't have time to access their humanity, to access their value system, to access what matters to them. Because they have to work so much, because our systems are so shitty. Right? So the manufactured discontent comes in two forms. Either you're drowning in society and having to live a life of just scraping by because it's not fair. We don't have community support. We're hyper individualistic. Capitalism has created a situation where the rich just keep getting richer by exploiting the poor. Or you do have enough. You are okay. You don't need to be working harder. You don't need to be consuming more goods and more products. But society tells you that if you don't feel good and if you don't feel satisfied, the two answers are produce more, right? Figure out your purpose, figure out your calling. Your job should be completely fulfilling. And that's the thing that you do. You work. And if you're not working, you should be working. Or you need to consume more things. Right? And that comes in so many different forms. You need to consume more things in terms of stimulation, movies, entertainment, sex, food, drugs, alcohol, parties, adventure, luxury. Or you need to consume more things in terms of self-improvement and, honing your skill more and improving yourself and improving your mind and improving your spirituality and fixing yourself all the time. Or you need to be, changing your appearance. You got to be constantly doing your nails and filling your face and makeup and trends and clothes and blah, blah, blah. It's a never-ending barrage of things to stimulate and distract you. And this feeling of like, I don't feel good, I don't feel satisfied. And culture swoops in and says, yes, that's because you suck. Right? That's because you're not enough. You're not doing enough, you're not consuming enough. And these are two things that capitalism has to offer that continues to make the system more and more powerful and leads us into deeper and deeper levels of dissatisfaction. It is not about consuming more or producing more. For most of us who are watching this, you do not feel dissatisfied in your life because your body isn't right, because your career isn't good enough, because you haven't achieved enough, because you're not spiritual enough, because you're not self-helping enough. What's actually missing? Community, connection to nature, and time where you are exploring your humanity, your actual humanity, your spirituality, your creativity, what you have to offer to others. That is what's missing. Your humanity. Right? So this is where all of this work that we do on this self-love path comes into play. This is why I created the mystery school. This is why I do coaching. This is what this is. We need to start to learn to reconnect to our emotions. What are you really feeling? When you get that feeling of dissatisfaction, or when you're like, I need to chase the next high. I need to do the next thing that's going to bring me fulfillment. Sex, drugs, money, party. The next high thing. I need to achieve the thing, right? The next Oscar moment. We need to learn to be with the emotions that are coming up under that. What are you really feeling? What's actually going on for you there? What are we running away from? And for most of us, again, we're going to start to realize that what we're really wanting is connection. We're wanting to slow down. We're wanting to explore our creativity without having to sell it to the system. We're wanting to explore our spirituality and our view of life that goes beyond just the physical, getting our physical needs met. We're going to have to process our childhood pain and our childhood trauma and the stuff that we've been indoctrinated into, that we have to do and that we have to be in order to be good enough. Right? A lot of us are just running from our emotional pain and from our trauma and from all the things that have harmed us in our childhoods and in our culture, and we're trying to numb it out. And we're thinking what I feel is dissatisfied. But what we are really feeling is pain from all the things we didn't get, from all the conditioning, from all the indoctrination, from the way we have to live that doesn't feel good. And we don't know how to validate that. We don't know how to see it. We don't know how to make room for the things that we don't like. And then from there, this work that we do helps us to start to get to a place where we say, okay, what are the things that I actually value, that I want to build my life around? And what are the things I've been indoctrinated into doing that I don't want to fill my life with anymore? This deconstruction phase of what we have been told we need to do, we need to be, and we need to pursue in order to be good enough, in order to be worthy, in order to be satisfied. We need to start to look at that and say, okay, is this actually bringing me satisfaction? Is this actually fulfilling? Does this align with my value system? Or is this all conditioning and I'm living someone else's life? Right? We need to start to ask ourselves these questions. Where am I living for approval? Where am I living for this future promise of being good enough? Where am I living for self-sacrificing myself over and over and over again to the system? For my caregivers and what they think is a good thing, for the jobs that I should have, for the career that I should have, for the body I should have, for the relationships I should have, that I don't even want, that don't actually matter to me, but that I have been convinced and trained that I need to go for in order to be good enough. And how can we start to detangle ourselves from that stuff? How can we start to let go of the things that are not fulfilling us? So we can make room to discover the things that are. Because that's, right? So we have that deconstruction part, which then is followed by the construction part of where you start to discover yourself. Where you start to discover, okay, right? What are my actual emotions? What are the things that actually light me up? What are the things I have to offer other people instead of living my life constantly for what I can get? Where do I see pain in the world that I want to contribute something to in terms of improvement or support? Where do I want to expand my spirituality and my curiosity that goes beyond the physical? Where do I want to explore my creativity and what it means to me to be creative? Because it looks different on all of us. Again, we return to this self-support. So we're starting to deconstruct what we have been trained to believe we need to pursue and we need to be in order to be good enough, in order to have a good life, if it's not actually feeling good. We process our childhood pain. We process our conditioning. We process all these things we've been promised and then let down on. We look for where we can start to offer something to a community around us. Because so much of the time, what's really missing is not what we can get or what we can take, but what we have to give. And as cliche as that sounds, I know it's so cliche, but it's true. We are not meant to live these hedonistic lifestyles. They don't feel good. When we live for ourselves and ourselves only, we are going to be dissatisfied. And then when we're doing this from a healthy place, it's not about giving so that we will be approved of, or so that we can say, I'm a good person, or to get pats on the back, or to earn love. We're giving because we have this natural connection to ourselves where we say, like, this is the thing I want to give. This is the thing that naturally rises up within me when I'm connected to my spirituality and my humanity and my empathy. This is where I care. I care about other people. I care about this planet. I care about the universe. And this is what I want to contribute to that. So that community part. We take time to be in nature. I don't think that we can fully live lives that feel good without a connection to nature in some way. Our nervous systems need it. We need community. We need to be getting from community and giving to community. And we need connection to nature. And then we need connection to creativity and spirituality. If we do not have one of those three things, we are not going to be satisfied. And there's no amount of sex, drugs, movies, self-improvement that is ever going to fill that void. Okay, so that's why the mystery school is like 5 years long. Because all of that deprogramming, deconditioning, figuring out where we're living lives that are not in alignment with us, that takes time. That's not something we do overnight. That's a big process. And then learning how to see where culture is selling us a lie, that we just need more consumption and more production, where really what we need is more community, more compassion, more nature, more creativity, more spirituality, more connection to our humanity. That's another huge prong. But that's the macro. That's the overarching, that's how you're going to find a life that feels good, is you have to have these other elements. Your life can't just be consumption and production. It can't just be career and sex and food. It's never going to be enough. Because you're a whole human. And there's so much more to you than that. So again, how can you start to feel your own emotions? Right? This is not meant to be how to do this. That's all my other videos. That's the mystery school. That's coaching. That's all the other stuff that you do. But if we can see it from this perspective of what we're looking for, community, nature, creativity, humanity, connection to spirituality, deconstructing culture, childhood trauma. If we can see that as being, okay, that's the map, it will help us navigate. So that's how we deal with dissatisfaction. I hope that was helpful. I hope that gives you some tools and some insights. It's a path. It's not going to happen today. You're not going to find the answer, because there isn't a the answer. It's a life. It's a package. But we can start to see where the elements that are missing, and how we can start to address that. Unpacking your childhood trauma. Unpacking your beliefs about what a good life is. Looking at what's actually bringing you satisfaction, what isn't. And then looking for community, nature, creativity, spirituality, and what you have to offer versus what you have to take. That's what we want to look for. Okay? So that's that. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. I'll see you in the next video, next day, week, month, whenever I see you. Have a lovely day. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you later.